Hi, so unfortunately footage from this week is really messed up. Um, I think something went wrong. Well, no, something definitely went wrong on my end with filming it. And it's just like it's like in slow-mo mode. It's really uncomfortable to watch. When I recorded it and when I like sort of paused it to play it back as I normally do, it seemed fine, but now that it's on my computer, it's being really weird. So if you are watching this, it means that I had just had to upload this little video explaining why this week doesn't actually have a clip, but you can listen to the audio, and of course you're always welcome to go and boost my streaming numbers on actual streaming platforms like Apple Music and Spotify, and I'm so sorry, and it won't happen again, and shout out to Aaliyah. And that's really sad because I was really sad about this episode because I was really comfortable on the couch and I just like that cozy feeling, and I was talking to you guys a lot more. So that's definitely a bummer. I'm not sure why that's happened, but it will be fixed going forward. Okay, thank you so much for your patience. Love you. Bye. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That genuinely helps so much. Thank you.
You're listening to the One Take Wonder podcast with the Hot Weird Girl, and I'm the Hot Weird Girl in question, Alexia. I'm so glad that you're here. New episodes come out every Monday, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. One thing that really helps this podcast is leaving your honest feedback, whether that's 5 stars on Apple Music, Spotify, or whatever platform you tune into, leaving a written review if possible, but most importantly, reaching out to me directly at Hot Weird Girl, that's girl with the 0 instead of an I, and letting me know what new ideas you have for the podcast, something you'd like to expand on more, or even just a funny, silly thing that you'd like me to address. Let's get into the episode, but not without me saying thank you so much for tuning in. Here we go. My chickens, I have missed you. I have missed you so dearly. And I know you guys missed me too, because I get your messages about it every single time that I'm gone. I guess I should have made this more clear in my last episode. I thought I mentioned it, but I should have started off the episode with, I was out of town for 2 weeks in Peru. I went with my sister as her graduation trip. Everybody say congratulations, Tia, for graduating medical school and going on to residency. Can't brag about her enough. General surgery, period. Anyway, it was a really fun trip. It was really great. We went to Lima and Cusco and Aguascalientes, and we did do Machu Picchu, which was word to the wise, maybe don't go to a Latin American country during Holy Week and expect it not to be super crowded. I thought my research had paid off, but hey, I don't claim to be a type A girly, and it all worked out in the end. It was really beautiful. We had great tour guides. Everyone was so, the food was so good. Oh my God. It is true what they say about Peruvian gastronomy. Wow, some of the best food that I've eaten. They have 5,000 varieties of potatoes. They know exactly what to do with those potatoes. It was incredible. It was honestly just so great to be there. I needed the break. I love to take a little break. You guys know that I love to take breaks in my recording schedule. Although last time I counted, out of the 52 weeks of the year, I still end up uploading 45 episodes. I think I uploaded 45 episodes last year. And, I plan on uploading 47, 48 in 2025. So trust and believe you're not starving, but I understand that I've left many of you hanging in what is finals week, which is, oh my God. My first finals week in college, I had no idea how to handle it. I don't know. For those of you who are listening on YouTube, by the way, you can listen on YouTube. And this is definitely a behind the scenes. Ooh, should have adjusted that background a bit more. But more of a behind the scenes vibe if you've ever been on the lives and you're just kind of replicating that feeling. But today I'm a little cozier in a blanket. I don't know. There's just something about when it's warm outside. I like to get really cozy under all my covers, but that's because I think I have low iron. Ew, I think you can hear my Pittsburgh accent when I said iron. Yeah, that's better. I have so many things to say and no idea what was I talking about? No idea where to begin. Okay. I just have to get this off my chest. I don't think pizza's that good. This is not unprovoked, okay? I just don't. If we've ever interacted on a live stream, you know that I have very strong opinions about noise in my house. I don't like noises to be made in my home. I like having a quiet home. I don't like having the TV on as background. I grew up in a house where the TV was on at my dad's house in the background, and it would just make me irrationally upset, which is how I got in the habit of turning off the electricity in the house. Meaning that, like, anytime I perceived things to be too loud, I would simply go to the garage and just cut the power. To the point where they tried to put a lock on there. Then I got a universal remote. Learned to turn how that bitch down. The point is I don't like loudness in my home, and I don't like watching new TV shows. And so some people would describe me as a picky eater, but it's not that I won't eat a lot of foods. It's just that, like, certain foods I truly believe in my heart of hearts are overrated, and I just cannot get behind pizza being like hot bread with sauce. Bread is just okay. Bread is cool. I got a bread machine, and my boyfriend and I have been going nuts with it. It's cool to make homemade brioche. It's cool to say the words brioche. But, like, now I have 4 loaves of bread that are just sitting in my freezer. Do you want some bread? No, I can't tell you where I live. Eh, if you live in my city, I'm willing to meet up with you at Reading Terminal or something and give you some frozen brioche. DM me. I could be open to it. Oh, God, now I'm gonna get murdered. Where was I going with this? Oh, yeah, just overrated foods. I'm just thinking about that because I went live. They banned me. Again, they literally banned me after I took my contacts out. Fuck me for not wanting to wear my contacts at this late hour. At the 8:30 in the pum. Anyway, this was all nonsensical rambling. What did I really want to talk about? Oh, yeah, a lot of topics planned. So shout out to my sister Alana, who has made it quite so. For my advice episode, my sister was the first person. You'll know her from the fashion episode, but like one of my earliest episodes, the interview with my sister, who's a fashion designer in New York. I have very cool siblings. And she was like, wait, what exactly did she ask? But she wanted to talk about resiliency, in this era of the Trump administration. And let me read her question specifically. Da 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 da. Oh no, I'm scrolling through our text where we talk about sunrise on the reaping. Okay, let me just say this while I'm scrolling. Now that it's been a bit more time, I liked Sunrise on the Reaping. That being said, I did think it was a little Harry Potter-esque, and I used to be a big Harry Potter freak. I don't know if I've ever talked about this before, but, like, I used to be a really big Harry Potter freak to the point where I perfected my, like, if you think my British accent is good now, I'm telling you, when I was a kid, it used to be so much better. I perfected my British accent. I became, like, a huge, like, I would dress in cloaks. I think Harry Potter was the first, like, big girl book that I read by myself in the first grade, and some of my earliest memories is my dad reading Harry Potter to me because he thought that Hermione was, like, a good protagonist for little girls. And I became very, very terrified of Voldemort. Like, incredibly terrified of Voldemort. Also, one of my earliest memories is going to the Harry Potter movie premiere, and then Voldemort popped out of Quirrell's head, and I, like, peeled out of the seat, up the hallway, screaming, into, like, trying to push the heavy door, and I was a really little kid. I'm not that tall of a person. I was very, like, underweight and weird looking as a child. And so my dad, like, picks me up, and he's like, Alexia, you're missing the important part of the movie. Which truly, no idea what this man was thinking. Anyway, I was a huge Harry Potter freak, like, had a book of spells. When my parents wanted to punish me, they would take the books away from me. Like, that was my grounding. I would either get the books taken away, or, like, they would be like, you can't go to the library, Alexia. And that was devastating to me as a child. And something in me when I read the conclusion, or, like, the epilogue for the 7th book kind of broke. Like, that's where I credit loving Harry Potter less in middle school, because I was like, wait. So I can understand that, like, Ron and Hermione get married, Harry and Ginny get married, fine. Maybe they're trauma bonded, maybe the experience of war, although I have a really, like, even at that age, I believe I was in middle school when it came out, like, maybe 7th or 8th grade. I know I wasn't in, no, maybe it was 6th. Who cares? I was a middle schooler, and I just remember being so disappointed that everything important and relevant to their lives, like who they decided to name their kids after, basically boiled down to how old they were in middle school and high school. Because I remember thinking, like, yeah, middle school is a great time, but I don't know that I've based most of my life around the choices that I made between 12 through 17. Granted, I wasn't fighting like a wizard Nazi war, but still, it was just so ridiculous and preposterous to me. Um, and I was like, oh, I don't know if that book series is that good. But then I got into this weird crisis where, because I had made Harry Potter such a core part of my personality for like all of my elementary and some of my middle school years, that it was like nobody around me allowed me that space to grow out of it. Like to this day, my family members will be like, oh my God, this Harry Potter thing. And I just don't have the heart to explain to them that like I haven't read those books since I was 17. And I've tried to listen to the audiobook, which there was a point in my life where I could not go to sleep without listening to the Chamber of Secrets on replay, like so bad that I wore my CD player. It would come in it would come in that huge little pack, and they were like only a certain amount of hours per disc. I wore my discs out. My mom had to replace them like at least twice. Do you know how bad you have to listen to something that the disc decides to stop working? And I had this little boom box or little like player that I would stream oh my God, I was such a Harry Potter freak. I also like wore the costumes and like memorized the spells, and like any to this day I can still put on the movie and recite it like word for word. I know this because my homegirl came over a few months ago and we decided to randomly watch the first Harry Potter movie. I don't have an issue with the movies. I'm just not gonna read the books again. Um and I was just muttering it to myself. It's ingrained. Like I can't think about my childhood without thinking about Harry Potter. Um, to this day, my family still tries to get me Harry Potter stuff, and they're like, "Oh, like you're a Gryffindor," and I'm like, "Yes." And sometimes I just go along with it to make them happy. Wait, what? Oh, right, because now that Summers on the Reaping has been out, and I can say that I'm totally obsessed with it, and yes, it is one of my favorite things I read this year. But to discuss the Harry Potter of it all, I hate the whole like Haymitch interacts with every adult who's like important or haunts the narrative later on. Like he had to be best friends with Katniss's dad and watched Katniss's mom and dad get together. Really? It had to be Effie. Like it was good, but at the same time, it was nice to be back in that universe. It was a little annoying to feel like, okay, maybe it's here for fan service. And like I really appreciated like the Beatty storyline and the Ampert storyline. um that was very interesting. I understand like the Wyrus and the Mags, but I would have preferred focusing on more victors, or having that time to focus on like some of the other tributes. I feel like we got to know the other tributes in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes better than we did in, the second quarter quell. And I understand that the number of tributes were doubled. And Haymitch is just also a different kind of narrator than Snow or Katniss. But this wasn't, I think it's the worst book of the trilogy, or not the trilogy, of the series. Not because it's not good and it's not enjoyable, but just in terms of the writing. Like there's a certain precision that I feel like Suzanne Collins always nailed, and this one was just lacking. Again, if the other books, if I would give them like a 9, I would simply give this one like a 7. It was still really good. I'll definitely reread it, and my sister right now has a copy of the book, and I'm just going to reread it again as soon as she gives it back. I really enjoyed it. I sobbed like a baby. I meant everything that I said, but now that some time has passed, I feel more comfortable, like, putting out some light criticisms, just some things that I didn't. Some part, like the pacing seemed a bit off. Like, I got the impression that she didn't want to overly focus on the games, which is fine, because sometimes I feel like people walk away from the games almost glorifying the violence the way that the Capitol spectators do. That being said, like the pacing of how we got there and some of the fleshing out of the characters didn't, I don't know. It didn't feel great compared to the others. And then when I think about the fact that like the Ballad of Songbirds and Snake was essentially the same pace, and I just felt like we got so much more depth. And again, that could just be like the narration style of like Snow, who's very observant and obviously has gotten to this point where he is now, and like Haymitch, whose priorities are elsewhere. And then, you know, you compare that to Katniss, which one thing I've always loved about the Hunger Games is you can tell how much starvation and food insecurity has impacted Katniss, because the most detailed description she'll ever give are about food, right? Like, yes, her feelings for Peeta, maybe her complicated feelings for Gale, maybe the trauma that she feels as a result of surviving the Hunger Games not once but twice, maybe, but the food that she's eating, oh, a paragraph, baby. Sweet, succulent berries, like, we know that you were traumatized from starving because food is what you want to talk about the most. Anyway, now that we've gotten that little 15-minute introduction out of the way, I finally found that text from my sister. On your next podcast, can you give advice on how to stay emotionally sane while the government unravels and the economy is scary? And I just think it's the importance of, like, cultivating your joy, not to sound like a hippie cult leader and sort of be like, you just have to, like, find your bliss and your peace, but more so just to, oh, that camera angle is so much better, but more so, happiness is something that you work towards. It's not necessarily something that you're guaranteed just because you're in the right situation. You really have to work at it and build it and cultivate it. And I think I touched on this in part one of the April Fool's episode when I said, like, you have to build things that you enjoy and love doing into your day. And making yourself happy truly has to be a full-time job. It has to be your number one priority. But that's obviously easier said than done when you're in better economic conditions. And I certainly felt it was easier to feel that way during the Obama times and during the Biden times. And just, this is my second go around as in the Trump administration, in a Trump presidency as an adult. The first was in college, and I've talked about this before, but I remember that period for like the first year and a half where I really struggled, because it was also, you know, this happened when I was 18, 19, so I'm coming into adulthood and I'm getting the sense from the other adults around me who are freaking out that, like, this is not normal. And there's something different to be said about the fact that, like, we got Donald Trump because of what Republicans were willing to acquiesce to. Like, I don't like when people draw that barrier, that boundary. That's not to say that each individual who identifies or ever identified as a Republican is bad, but it is to say that, like, there is a clear correlation between what was allowed to happen with the Tea Party as a reaction to the Obama presidency. Even just the embrasure of, like, Reagan as, you know, sort of the godfather of these ideals. And, like, you can really see everything that Trump and Project 2025 has set out to pull off now when, you know, the first, like, 150 days of his presidency were very much established from these, like, quote unquote reasonable, rational, respectable conservative figures. And so I think it's unfair to paint Trump as, like, this unique monstrosity. Certainly the way that he's going about enacting, you know, this fascist rule is very different and scary. But to say that he's the first champion in his political party of these certain methods and, like, you know, wanting to oppress different groups of people simply because they don't match up to, like, what his version of humanity is, that in itself is not new. That's just something that I like to make clear at the outset. I don't like when people do that sort of, you know, that sort of like pretending that he's some sort of anomaly. That's the word that I was looking for. But it was very hard because I was getting the sense from adults around me, going back to when I was 18, 19, and really grappling with this for the first time, is that this wasn't normal. And there was a real sense of grief that I think I've always carried, because it's like, wow, I'm not getting the correct version of adulthood, which was then an incredibly hard pill to swallow because, and of course, the pandemic, and I've talked about this before, how I just got a taste for, like, I graduated college and May of 2019, the pandemic happened, March 2020. So not even a full year of, like, what adult life was like when I was freshly 22 and finally in an apartment that had nothing to do with student housing, university housing, and just, like, really on my own. And, like, this was what adult life was like. And now, as a 27-year-old, you know, 5 years later, I still don't see parts of that back. And that's annoying because in some ways I think it would have been my sister actually who asked me the question, we disagree about this because she's like, you know, I understand that I didn't. She's like, at least you got to experience like a pre-COVID adult world, and I was like, yeah, but it was so brief and so fleeting, and also I was in my first year of law school, like being if you know anything about your like your 1L year, which is what you call your first year of law school, it's very difficult. It's very mentally taxing. You're getting used to law school. Your 1L grades are very determinative of like your law school experience. It's just a very difficult time. And so, wow, if I had known that the pandemic was coming, I probably wouldn't have gone to law school. Probably would have traveled or something. But I also would have told myself, like, maybe you should go out on that random Thursday. Like, I was adjusting from coming from college and like partying a bit more. Well, and I partied a lot. And then, wanting to be taken seriously in law school. And so it's like, I'm not going to do any of that. And it's like, damn, if I had known that it would be a year and a half until I hit the clubs again, like, I absolutely would have not been so weird and uptight about going out on the weekends. I would have had one more drink at that happy hour. I would have danced a bit harder. I would have worried about the work less, especially in my spring semester when if you were a student during the COVID times, you know that they probably made your grades pass fail. So it was like, what was the fucking point of like staying in and busting my ass and preparing these outlines like months before finals? Only to have them be rendered pointless because my grades were pass fail and they never factored into my GPA, even though that was the best that I would ever do in law school, which was frustrating. Um, yeah, there's just a certain obviously there's like a levity that existed before COVID and before we all had to deal with like mass death and the trauma from that, but there was also just like nothing was as scheduled. Like this sounds really weird, but you used to be able to walk into a nail salon and just like kind of get your nails done, and I just have a very hard time doing that now. And I know that seems like a small thing, but it's just also like I don't know. I always think about that Bud Light commercial that they ran. Maybe it was Bud Light, but it was they were playing the song like "We'll meet again, don't know when, don't know where, but by now we'll meet again." Whatever that song. It's like people bumping into each other and just like being sweaty and gross. Like that it took years for people to even want to stand next to each other in close crowded environments, and you don't realize how much you like a person, like their sweat touching you, until you're isolated in the house and you realize you need part of that to function. Like my boyfriend and I love to have picnics, and we always pick really crowded spots, and somebody asked me once, like, isn't it kind of annoying to be in these really crowded areas when you're trying to picnic? And it's like, no, it's genuinely nice to be around other human beings, even if you never talk about them, just sort of as proof that like I'm alive, I'm here. So yeah, already having that sense of foreboding, my sophomore year when he gets elected, yeah, so I guess I would have been 19, um and then following it up with the pandemic was hard. But I remember I got the advice from my professor that like if you want to survive this, like you are going to have to start taking your happiness seriously. And I didn't want to give up being politically active or like politically in tune. I understand that some people have adopted the stance that like there's nothing I can do politically. I have to protect myself, but just I'm not saying that I'm like Rosa Parks with it, that I'm a champion and activist in the streets, but I do think that even the smallest thing that you can do to make a difference or better your community is worthwhile and valuable. And I still think you owe others that, not because, like, oh, well, I'm part of the 95%, the 97%, and they're just not going to catch me working to better everyone else, but just because like it's what I would want my community members to do for me. And surrounding yourself with people who volunteer, who show up to the neighborhood cleanups, who just even being the type of person who learns your neighbor's name and like offers them eggs or food, or like the power goes out, you knock on their door and you're like, hey, you know, I called the power company. Remember the power company got my power off for almost 24 hours, and then I couldn't get a podcast episode out. Trauma. But oh my god, that was not a fart. That was me rubbing my feet on the couch. You guys probably couldn't hear that in the fart. All right, moving on. Even bothering to like tell your neighbors like, hey, Pico is out. The lights aren't going to come back for a while. Like that stuff matters. And also, just by virtue of putting yourself in spaces with people who value that, you're more than likely to end up with a better community than if you were to try to surround yourself with like a bunch of people who value not interacting with others. And so I really had to learn quite painfully what burnout looked like, what mental exhaustion looked like, what it felt like to be so helpless and so paralyzed at the news that in this state of paralysis, obviously, I wasn't effective. I couldn't move. But what does it mean? I know that's very abstract to say, like, oh, you have to take your happiness seriously and blah, blah, blah. But, like, what does that look like in the day to day for those steps? Because we could talk at length, and I think I have on this podcast before, about how happy or how important it is to, like, cultivate joy, right? I think back to one of my favorite episodes, which is like Who Owns Joy and Orgasms, where I talked about that episode from The Atlantic, or that article from The Atlantic, about, you know, love and diamonds being abundant, and how important it is to just embrace like joy and happiness as like a never ending resource, much in the same way that love is. But how do you implement that practically outside of just listening to this on your Tuesday morning commute to work? So I came up with sort of a list in no particular order, just in the order of how I remember them, of like little everyday things that you can do to make yourself more comfortable. I mean, the first thing would be to literally sit down with a list and like draft what are the things that make you happy, and then sort those into 3 categories. What are things that make you happy every day? I love seeing elephants. The Philadelphia Zoo does not have elephants, so I like to watch documentaries about elephants, but I don't do that every day. So I would put that in the category of like, you know, attainable joys. Let me start from the beginning. Let me break this down. All of the things that make you happy should be things that are attainable. Yes, you can say I would be really happy if I went to Thailand, but like if you're not in the position where you can go to Thailand regularly, don't put that on your list of things that make you happy. Like, put that on a different list that's about like goals that you want to achieve in the future. Right now we're talking about things that are you can do today, tomorrow, or in the next month, right? So things that make me happy. Talking to one of my friends once a day. At least one. I have a lot of friends, I'm very fortunate. At least one of my friends once a day. That makes me happy. Hanging out with my boyfriend as often as possible. That makes me happy. Seeing my friends as often as possible. That makes me happy. Hanging out with Matthew. That makes me happy. Going for walks. That makes me happy. So seeing my cat is something that I can do every single day. I mean, if Matthew could, he would literally live in my skin. So it's obviously something that I can do every single day, multiple times a day. Talking to my boyfriend, talking to my friends. Those are things that I could do every single day, multiple times a day. And, you know, are sort of a never, they're like a guarantee of things that can happen. I also like to shop, but that's something that maybe I can do once a month. That's not an everyday sort of thing. Although I will have that type of money eventually. Um, you know, eating good food, that's something that I can control and that I can eat every day. I like to cook. I like the stress release from cooking, especially after like a long day. So that's something that I can control. So you make those lists, something you can do every day, something you can do often, and something you can do every couple of months, things that bring you joy, cultivate joy, and then you orient your day around those things. Whatever hours you go to work, you should make sure that before and after work you have a plan to make yourself happy. You cannot just come back from work, sit in your house, and do nothing but scroll on TikTok. You're going to make yourself fucking miserable, especially if your For You page is designed to, like, we've talked about the algorithms before, like, keep you engaged on the algorithms, keep you sort of stuck in this, like, position of always checking and wanting, and like the fake journalists, like, you, I'm not gonna say his name, but you know who, like, breaking news, it's really just like reading off headlines. And it's also, you know, you can look up his dad. If you know who I'm talking about, you can look up his dad and what he did for the Trump administration, and also where he served his time. And you can come back and tell me if you think that person is like a reliable source for anti-Trump news. And you can also look up his viewpoints on Israel. Okay. Moving on from that. But beyond, you know, doing what did Alana ask? I just lost the... Dude, we text about songbirds and snakes so much. How to stay emotionally sane while the government unravels and the economy is scary. On the economy front, I would highly recommend the subreddit Poverty Finance. Regardless of what your financial status is, there are certain things that you do that I I mean, I grew up in a black household, so like things like rewashing plastic bags, like the Ziploc bags and reusing them, as long as you don't put like meat or anything that's really spoilable in one of those bags, you can rewash them like 4 to 5 times, dude. Save every Tupperware container, even if you can't, even if you don't know. Let me say this. The bottom, every plastic container has like a little recycle sign and a number in it. And some of those numbers, like some of the things that the restaurants are serving food in, they're not meant to be reheated. They're not, meant to go through the dishwasher or whatever. So know the number and what it correlates is like what type of plastic it is. But just because you can't use that for food doesn't mean that it's not like a storage container. You have to start thinking like that. I do think that people don't realize how much money they're spending just in terms of like just because something says it's a single use item doesn't mean you have to use it only one time. And again, as long as it's not around like spoilables, as long as it's not like poisoning you, you can use it for anything. Like there are certain, to go containers that like, yeah, maybe I would never reheat, but like those ones you can get from the Cheesecake Factory that just like open and snap shut. Maybe I would never put food in those again. Maybe I would never put that in the microwave or the dishwasher, but like that holds something in my house. Fuck. Especially if nobody can see it. That's a container right there. You know how much that would cost at the container store? So I would highly recommend like the poverty finance angle for how you get there. I'm not a financial advisor, and we've talked about my duty on math, but it's about keeping yourself happy and embracing the fact that like this is your full-time obligation. Um Fascism operates on the complacency of the public, right? You don't need every person to believe in like fascist ideals. You don't need to get every person to believe in the sanctity of the orange overlord. You just need enough people who are vocal, willing to enforce it, and a populace who's too tired to fight back. And I firmly believe that you have to love something to want to change it. Like you have to, if not love this country, I mean, I love this country, but love the people in this country and the citizens in your community enough to want to fight for them. And you also have to be optimistic that change is coming, that change can happen. I do not think that you can fight for a better future, want a better future with a negative, pessimistic attitude. I think back to one of my other favorite episodes that I recorded, like Whimsy is Not Lost, which was the season 1 finale. And just this idea of like, okay, I love to complain, so I'm going to complain for good because I know that I'm probably realistically never going to stop complaining. I mean, I could stop complaining, but like it also gives me so much joy. See, that's another thing that I can do every day. Bitching, I do get some satisfaction from that. Is that good for me long term? Is that fucked up? I don't know. I don't care. It is what it is, and it has led to the blossoming of this podcast. I bitch and whine for good. That's so sanctimonious. I bet you I whine for good. I mean, sometimes. I don't know. Never take yourself too seriously. That's another way to keep yourself happy. But also take yourself very seriously. The two wolves inside of me, they're looking at each other. Side to side, left and right. You know who's really looking at me? The malevolent spirits that live in my Brita. I believe that each Brita filter is imbued with a set of very mischievous pixies. When I say pixies or fairies, I'm thinking about the J.M. Barrie Peter Pan version. Very racist book, by the way. I reread that this year, and I was like, oh my fucking god, I forgot how racist this is. It was uncomfortable. I'm not going to get to 100 books this year. That goal is quickly waning, but at the beginning of the year, I was like really dead set that I was like, I like to read a book a week, so I usually end up reading like 50 books a year. There's 52, but sometimes you take time off, or maybe like one year I read like 60, and I was like, I'm gonna get to 100. At this point, it's looking kind of impossible, but whatever. But I started off this year with reading Peter Pan on New Year's Day, and also Night Bitch, which was pretty good. I'm such an Amy Adams. No, stay focused. Focus. Yeah, but A Night Bitch by Amy Adams was really good. I'm sorry, guys. I just haven't talked to you guys in 2 weeks, and so it's just like an explosion of like yapping, like of seriousness, but also like completely silly rambles because I haven't gotten it out to you, and like I missed you chickens so much. You think you miss me more, but like no, I have missed you guys Genuinely so, 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 so fucking much. I love recording this podcast for you guys. I love feedback. I love the DMs. They all mean so much to me. If you've ever reached out to me privately or like talked to me in public, by the way, if you ever see me in public, you should come up and say hi. Never forget I saw this beautiful girl at the Philadelphia Flower Show. That show ended up being a nightmare. This girl, she was so pretty and so nice. Her name started with an O. I would have to look at my Instagram to remember, but she was like so nice. And then I messaged her afterwards just to be like, she posted me on her Instagram, which was so flattering. She was like, I met one of my favorite content creators. And I was like, oh my God, like, thank you so much. And she was like, I'm nervous, I'm awkward. And so I'm just going to give this disclaimer. I am weird. Like, I do think that's not a bit that I'm doing. Like, no, I actually am quite peculiar and strange. And so if we meet in public and you're like, oh, she's being a bit odd, like, no, I am excited to see you. I just don't know how to describe or like explain that, I have a vibe. And that vibe is what some like 60 years ago, or as my grandma would describe me now, like, you've got a delicate constitution. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you can always come up and say hi, and I love that, and your DMs mean so much to me, and so I'm just so excited to be back podcasting for you guys. What was I talking about before all of this? Okay, let's go backwards. Let's try to work it out. Oh, yes. Peter Pan, the malevolent spirits that live in my Brita. Um, Tinkerbell, like, and all fairies can only experience one emotion at a time. And so I believe that part of the reason why your Brita never seems like it's working, like, have you ever filled up your water bottle and the water in your Brita doesn't move, but then you fill up a glass of water and your Brita goes from being full to completely empty, and you're like, who is controlling this? It's the malevolent spirits that live in the Brita. Within the Brita filter, amongst the charcoal and sort of the, chemical filtration system, which who knows if that thing is actually working, because honestly Brita could be lying like fuck and they just couldn't stop anyone from buying their products. um those little pixies who are only capable of feeling one emotion at the time, if you upset them, if you keep them pleased, like, they're very pleased when you fill up a water bottle, because then it gets to the top and then they feel like, okay, I don't have to work quickly now. But if you just fill up like a little glass, like, they're gonna be like, no, you're gonna be back in 5 minutes. And so they're filled with the rage, and so that rage actually blocks, like, they suck up the water into their like little porous skin, which, like, the way that our skin is porous is not the way that their skin is porous. Their skin is actually like full of little holes. They're not very, well, I don't want to say they're unattractive. I don't fool with ghosts though, so if there is a spiritual presence in here, like, get out. But at the same time, these little spirits, you just have to keep them happy and you have to appease them, but you also have to let them know who's boss. Whenever I feel like the spirits in my Brita are acting up, sometimes I turn the fridge on its coldest setting so that they can freeze. What are you gonna do? Open the door? Lower the setting? Now you can be cold in there, bitch. I could put it back to a more comfortable temperature for you, because they love when the fridge is on 3, but they do not like when the fridge is on 6. And they should bear that. And they listen to this podcast. They listen to me record. They know I'm coming for them. I actually want to go refill my water glass now. And if they so much as fuck with me, they're dead. I don't know how I got on the subject of talking about the malevolent spirits in my Brita. I also just love saying the malevolent spirits in my Brita. There's just something so fun about it. It just rolls off the tongue. Say it with me. The malevolent spirits in my Brita. Okay, that's enough of that. We've talked about it too much. It's not rolling off the tongue anymore. It's like when you eat that third piece of cake and you're like, I was just being greedy. I never know how to savor food properly. Like, I'll eat a delicious meal and then I'll be like, let's just ruin it by making myself like super full. And you're like roly-poly out of the restaurant and you're gonna be wheeled. It's embarrassing. Ugh. And then like the next day you're like, I don't have as many leftovers as I want because I ate them all last night. And it's like, that's not where I wanted to be. That's not where I wanted to be in life. But like, you've got to make little jokes. You've got to make little jokes. You've got to keep up little bits. I've told you this before, but I have been keeping up bits that only I understand for years, because it keeps me happy, because it's about cultivating your joy and your peace. And I really, really mean what I say, that like, you have got to take that shit seriously. You don't have another choice but to be incredibly fucking serious about not going nuts, because that's what they want, to win. And you don't let them win with their gay stuff. Okay. No. I remember what I was talking about. Um, in all seriousness, though, like this administration, as we talked about before, is planning on grinding you down. It's planning on making you complacent and burnt out and ineffective against fighting against the system. And I really think that you have got to be radical enough, even if it's the only radical thing that you're capable of accomplishing that day, even if the news is so bad you can't get out of bed, you have got to believe that tomorrow you will. And that things absolutely will get better because you cannot fight for a tomorrow or a future that you can't visualize. I'm always awe inspired by my ancestors and the people who came before me, and it's just like, you know, I could talk about my theory about why I think black people cling so hard to Jesus, and yes, part of it is like colonization and being indoctrined, fine, whatever. But I truly think that like every civil rights movement, not just the one in the 60s, but like every civil rights movement, every moment of sacrifice has come from people who were doing the most Jesus like thing. For God so loved the world that he sacrificed his only begotten son to die for our sins, to sacrifice unknown people, all of the people that have gotten me to where I'm sitting right now, all of the people, if you exist on any axis of oppression, who died, whose names that you don't know, who don't go in history books or textbooks, who will never be known, not even to their friends and family, but some people who died and sacrificed and whose only contribution is known to the cosmos and did so in the most Jesus-like manner, that they will die for your future salvation. You'll have a better chance. That is an incredibly Christ-like thing to do, to sacrifice yourself on the promise that people you don't know, people who may not follow in your vision or teachings or even be appreciative of what you have done, can maybe have the chance for a better life. Is also why I think black people have perhaps clung to Christianity very hard. Even as an atheist, I can respect that. I have not said a thing about the Pope. Speaking of atheism, you know what I love? The papacy, the conclave. We're this close to having a potentially Filipino Pope. I want to go to the Philippines and do karaoke. Oh, I want some kare kare. But it's incredibly Christ-like, I think, to take on the brown. I don't like when people boil down the peaceful resistance advocated for by Dr. Martin Luther King. Sort of the imagery of like people being sprayed with fire hoses and being attacked by dogs and walking on Selma or marching on Selma and other locations, excuse me. And boiling it down was like, oh, they were willing to take the shit. And I think there's something incredibly Christ-like about I'm going to sacrifice my body, my well-being, my children, my safety, my sanctity, and excuse me, sorry, and know that my dignity is maintained because this is the most godly thing that I can do, to give up myself again for this promise of future salvation. And so in a way I'm inspired by that, and it's something that I carry with me. Not in a way, it's something I'm absolutely inspired by and carry with me. And it's just like, yeah, I've got to believe that hard that things can get better. In the same way that like I know that the love that I have and I cherish so much is not something unique, but is rather an abundant resource that's felt by like millions and billions of people on this planet. So too do I believe that like because I want this world to be a better place, I just know that I can't be alone in that. Like there have to be other people who want better, who are willing to do the work for better. And as much as I'm not like the sun is always shining type of person, I do believe in the potential and the promise for tomorrow. And I also believe that Annie is one of the best musicals ever. And I believe that Tomorrow Too by Gorilla featuring Cardi B is an amazing song, in part because I consider it an extension of the Annie universe. I won't be explaining that to you. I think it's something you either understand instinctively or you don't. If you don't understand it, I'm not calling you a stupid pea brain to your face, but I am calling you one in my head because the connection is rather obvious. You know what's not a part of the Annie universe? Jay-Z's Hard Knock Life. You know who I don't like? Jay-Z. I'm never going to get a Beyonce sponsorship, so fuck Beyonce's goofy looking husband. He's unsettling. There's something unsettling about looking like that. You can't make fun of the way people look. You can if they're terrible. He's not great. And he's also getting off, like, really. You know, I don't know how you're friends with Diddy that long. I'm not even gonna go there. I will end it on a. Wait, no. Someone let me know in the comments if I've talked about my theory about why Justin Bieber's crashing out right now. And it's not really like a Diddy thing. It's not really a Selena Gomez thing. It's absolutely Scooter Braun. I cannot remember if I was having this conversation with you guys or if I was explaining this sort of Lori Lightfoot style, hands splayed in the air, blazer coming over to my knuckles. I love Lori Lightfoot so much. I have a magnet of her on my fridge. She is and will always be my mayor of Chicago and the mayor of my heart. But explaining Lori Lightfoot style, just the lore of like this completely unsubstantiated claim that I can't prove with anything other than vibes and like a very profound, unshakable feeling in my gut that I'm completely correct. That I am completely and utterly correct. Has this not been in focus the entire time? Oh my god. It's not great, no bueno. But it's good to be back. I did promise you guys that episode about fashion. It is coming next week. But first, I have to address my sister's request. You know, I was a bit frightened of the consequences if I didn't. Thank you. So, you know what? Can I talk for another 15 minutes? Give it to an hour. Oh, maybe. I mean, you guys haven't seen me in 2 weeks, which many of you were quite displeased with. And I again, it is flattery. I do take it very seriously. Another thing that I think I haven't talked about enough is just like, I will not let them grind me down out of spite. Like, I'm going to outlive this evil. It's not going to kill me. I'm sorry. I know exactly how, when, and at what age I'll die. I can't divulge. Otherwise, the witch told me I could be cursed. But I just know that I am destined for a long and prosperous life on this earth. And part of what helps me thrive now is knowing that, like, I am going to outlive this. I will not be killed without my permission. I'm not going out without my consent. Like, I'm going to outlive this fucking evil and I'm going to dance on its grave. It is partially, if it's not like the love or the something, it's like the spite of knowing that, like, you cannot, my joy is nothing that you can steal from me. In the words of Lucy Gray Baird, nothing that you can take is ever worth keeping. My joy, my sanity during these times is so precious to me. It is not something that you can take. It is something that I will fight for over and over and over again to retain full custody of with no visitation rights for evil. Like, I will not be a casualty of this. I will not give them that, because that is, again, going back to what I said, what I want. And if it can't be like this embrasure of like, I want things to be better, I want, you know, better for myself and better for my people, out of this like optimism, then fuck yeah, let that spite fuel you and be like, no, I will outlast you. You don't want me to enjoy my birthday. You don't want me to sort of make do with the means that I have. You don't want me to find community. You want me to be isolated and alone so that I keep buying shitty products off of Amazon. Fuck you, no. You know? Sometimes it's that spite and that anger of like, you cannot take this from me. You cannot keep me from what is my purpose on this earth, which I always believe is happiness. How do you find that spite? I think it's about that. I think is less able to be broken down into concrete steps, but there truly is something about, I don't know, like at my core, this is not something that can be fucking taken from me. This is my life. I only get to be 27 once that I know about. I only get to be 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Like, I will not have some of the most pivotal moments of my life stolen or overshadowed by this terrible man and his terrible agenda. And not only am I going to do my part in making sure that something like this never happens in my beloved country again, but I'm also going to make sure that, like, out of spite, I will not wake up in a cold sweat because of what you were doing. You don't have that power over me. I have that power over me.
I won't be rage baited into despair. I won't give in to it. I'll read you my favorite quote from Avatar The Last Airbender, which is, of course, Uncle Iroh um, talking about, hope is something you give yourself. Let me just find it. And God, I truly think, the best show of all time. I will never forget my old roommates and I um, used to um, do like brackets, like ranking like best Nickelodeon shows. And when they voted for SpongeBob over Avatar: The Last Airbender, I didn't talk to them for like 3 days. Here's the quote. You must never give in to despair. Allow yourself to slip down that road and you surrender to your lowest instincts. In the darkest times, hope is something you give yourself. That is the meaning of inner strength. I think about that all the time. I truly think there's so many blessed lessons that we can learn from that franchise, although you guys will never get me to like or respect Korra. Um, but it's that Uncle Iroh quote that always keeps me going, and that I turn to, and I really think, hope is something that you give yourself. How you form that hope, the basis of your hope, optimism, spite, I don't know, but you've got to maintain it. You've got to have it. And I don't care if that's really cliche or perhaps advice that you've heard before. It really is the best that I can give you, that everyone keeps repeating it for a reason because it works. Make that list of what finds you happy. What can you do to integrate happiness in your entire, in your life? Go outside if you have the ability. I'm telling you, 10, 15, an hour in nature really will boost your mood. Joy is a weapon. Self-care is how you make sure that you're still a fighting machine for tomorrow. And don't ever forget that that has as much value as being a loud, angry voice. And you need to be motivated by those things and have those things that you're actually effectual to someone. I hope this was helpful. This is really the conclusion to the advice segment that has pretty much lasted all month. I can't believe, oh my God, you know that in a few days, I believe it's May 3rd, May 4th, May 5th, or May 6th, will be 2 years since I started this podcast. So I don't think I say it often enough, even though it may feel like I say it all the time. But thank you so much for allowing me to do this. It's incredible. If you haven't voted yet for me at the Black Influence and Achievement Awards, please do, because voting closes in about mid-May. And I would love to secure that nomination. Thank you so much for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And honestly, please comment. It helps and boosts so much, and it means so much to me personally to see all of your feedback. As always, you can hit me up on the socials. You know where to find me. I will see you next week, next Monday, as we resume our regularly scheduled programming. Until then, love you. Bye.